People say, drugs, pharma doesn't spend that much money on research, but to me, it's like, okay, your brain doesn't use all your body's energy, right? But if you don't have your body, your brain can't work.
Stephen Krawczyk, how are you doing?
Oh, great, Michael.
Wonderful to have you here. How are you?
Good.
So you're talking from Silicon Valley now?
Yes, Palo Alto.
Okay, so we're right across the street. Wonderful, but you're originally from actually New York, right? You're from the East Coast.
Originally from Poland, but I got to the United States when I was 6. So essentially, I grew up here, spent time growing up in New York, went to school there, and then when college, I ended up at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and as it happened, for 9 years, and that's a little bit of a story.
So let's start over there. Spending 9 years at the University of Michigan.
Right. So I was pretty early on. I was kind of fascinated by chemistry, and especially medicinal chemistry, how pharmaceuticals work, and things like that. And so I wanted to study medicinal chemistry, and there aren't that many medicinal chemistry programs in the country. A really good one was at the University of Michigan, at the College of Pharmacy, and it actually turned out to be an incredible stroke of luck for me to go there. So it was a kind of interesting story. I applied to a variety of schools. Michigan ended up being my first choice. I ended up going up there. I got a work-study job, stipend, and sort of my first week on campus there as an undergrad. I went to the office, looked up jobs, and I go, oh wow, look, a lab assistant at the College of Pharmacy. Perfect. So I go there Friday afternoon, and I meet the guy there, and he says, well, it's really cleaning rat cages, and that job's already taken. Sorry. I got introduced to this woman who is doing like cell culture biology, drug testing, and cell culture. Why don't you go meet Linda? So he took me upstairs, introduced me to this postdoc researcher, Linda Botrang, and I'm talking about what I like to do, what I'm interested in, and she goes, well, this is like cell culture stuff. I'm not sure you'd be really interested in that. So she said, well, let me introduce you to this guy over here. And this was already Friday, 5:30. So I go in, and this is kind of the old days, where this guy's in his office smoking cigars, and turned out to be the chairman of the Department of Medicinal Chemistry. And,
Wow.
He said, okay, tell me about yourself. I go in the spiel, and then he says, well, we don't really have any openings. We didn't have any openings, but tell me more. So we keep on talking. And then he kind of just starts making like he's ready to shoo me out of the office. And then I go, oh, by the way, what about the job? He goes, oh yeah, you can start. You can start next Monday. This is just one of those stories where I was in the right place, and you could say it's luck, but I did my research, and I was at the right place. And Friday afternoon maybe wasn't at the right time, but maybe it was, because it showed that the people that were still there were really passionate about their job, and they would recognize that same passion in me. So it's not really a coincidence. It wasn't planned out, but when I look back with hindsight. So
I love it.
Kind of fast forward, I started working in a lab, first like washing dishes. And of course, just like one of these Zen books, the first thing he did, he showed me this incredibly messy lab. And he said, okay, why don't you clean this up? And of course, I was really excited, and I cleaned it up really, really great. And he came back very impressed. So I ended up helping this graduate student that was struggling a little bit. But basically, he decided, okay, let's give this guy a helper, and he can help wash dishes or set up reactions and just learn, basically. So basically, I was very lucky to start out working in that lab as an undergrad. My first week there, and then fast forward 4 years. Well, three years later, it's time to figure out what I'm going to do. I just did not really feel ready to go out in the workforce. I wanted to get my graduate degree. So I applied for the graduate program there, got accepted now before I was helping a graduate student. Now I was a graduate student there.
Wow.
And I obtained my PhD in medicinal chemistry 5 years later.
Why medicinal chemistry? So what was fascinating to you about medicinal
I
chemistry?
just, looking at books and how, sort of the original medicinal chemistry, all the drugs came from plants, morphine, belladonna, strychnine, reserpine was the first, and reserpine was the first antihypertensive. It was isolated from plant, and it turned out actually it caused depression. So I was just kind of fascinated how things cause the different actions. Of course, if you look at some of the amphetamines, which are the original antidepressants, they cause high blood pressure. So you have kind of just very interesting. It was just fascinating to me, just looking at the structures, how the similar structures had similar activities, or sometimes similar structures had very different activities. It was all fascinating. So I wanted to get into that. And just be able to make, cure stuff. So
talk to me about the transition from medicinal chemistry on the East Coast now to Silicon Valley.
Right. So that was another interesting thing. So actually, during my my grad students, after I finished my master's, I always wanted to go to California. Just Silicon Valley, even back when I was in New York, had this draw. I didn't even know what Silicon Valley was. I thought it was like this place. I didn't realize it was really a construct.
But why? So paint me the picture, because now it's very obvious why a lot of people flock to the Bay Area, or
right.
Well, in 2020 a lot of people flock out of the Bay Area, but until now a lot of people flock in here. And why back then, when it's less of a big bubble and this worldwide hub?
Yeah, because I think especially my dad was an electronics engineer, and then basically Silicon Valley got started in Silicon. So,
in Silicon, right?
It kind of. Yeah, but I kind of was like had a hankering for getting out here. But so kind of back to the story was kind of interesting. And when I finished my master's in 1986, I said, maybe I can get out here now. So I applied to UCSF, the medicinal chemistry program there for the PhD. I got in. I came out here to visit. When I got off the plane, the tarmac at that point at SFO, we actually. They brought up a staircase. The fresh air was just incredible. I mean, this is basically Detroit. I flew out of Detroit when I was in Ann Arbor, and that was before emissions. So California was the first to have the car emissions. So it was like night and day. I love this place. They had a day of events for the incoming, potential students.
Right.
And I said, I really want to stay here, but as a grad student, I couldn't really enjoy it because I didn't have much money, and you'd be busy in the lab. Yeah, the guy back there really helped me out by giving me that job. I'll stay. So anyway, ended up staying for another 3 years. And then the interesting point is that what happened is that when it was time to graduate, I started looking around for postdocs, and there was this guy. I saw a postdoc position at Caltech with Peter Durbin, very very high level guy in that field, and I wrote up a proposal for antisense DNA. At that point, I didn't even realize it was a thing, but I figured that would be cool because I studied nucleosides. If if you string these along, you could actually make like a code and actually selectively block genes. So I wrote up a proposal to him. I didn't get in there. Okay, whatever. So fast forward another couple of months, my boss comes back from a meeting in California and says, hey, I met this guy, and, you might be interested in getting a job there. This company called Gilead Sciences, and they're doing antisense. I go, wow, great. This is what I wanted to do. So there's a 30-person startup at this point in Foster City. I go there, and it's just great. And I kind of aced the interview. I get the position, and guess who's on the board of the advisors? Peter Durbin. So this is what I kind of getting back to. You always kind of end up in the same place, and because, well, you just do, because you just naturally kind of fit there.
Right. But it sounds like, on one hand, you're saying you come back to the same place. On the other hand, a theme that I'm picking up here throughout your experiences is that you're very open to these opportunities. You're taking that Friday afternoon meeting, and you're getting excited about this idea of cleaning a lab and doing it to the best of your abilities. Yeah. You're excited about accepting a job offer in Foster City with a 30% startup. So things are aligning, but it's not just by chance. It sounds like because you're also advocate. You're actively looking for these opportunities and harnessing them, right?
Yeah. So I hate to say actively looking, because I sometimes I'm afraid I'm a little bit more passive, but I kind of always try to place myself in places where these opportunities are just there, and then come to me, because it's a little bit more natural. If you try to you're pining for stuff. I mean, some people can pull it off. The J Ventures people are just a great bunch, and they're like go-getters, and they can do it. I can't, so I compensate by just trying to be in the right place at the right time.
Wonderful.
So there I am with Peter Dervin, and then working side by side with a former postdoc of his. So I would have ended up there anyway. if I had gotten that postdoc, I would have ended up at Gilead anyway. So just like that, it's pretty funny.
Wonderful.
And then of course, if you go forward, 25 years that I spent there, it ended up to be a Fortune 100, $100 billion company.
Wow.
And almost went bankrupt a couple of times in its early days.
So you're joining a 30-person startup with somebody on the board who you hope to do a postdoc with, and you end up doing similar work within the company. Yeah. Fast forward 25 years, and that small startup in Foster City that somebody told you about is a $100 billion company.
Right. And then, so the other funny thing is that during there, I ended up transitioning from medicinal chemistry at the bench, leading a discovery group, and then getting drafted into the patent office, into the patent department there, because as the pharma business is all about really patents everything. And Gilead's idea there was to mine the patent landscapes of other people's patents to figure out what to do. And then you have to design around, right? Because you have some other company has a great molecule, but you want to make something better, but they have a patent on all these broad classes of molecules. You have to, as a chemist, figure out, okay, what's going to be active but not going to be dominated by their patent. So I kind of
spend just 2-3 minutes talking about why patents in pharma and medicine. Why is it such an important thing? And because for me and for a lot of other people who are not coming in from this industry, it's when we're building software as a service, it's very hard to patent as far as I understand. But it sounds like in the field that you were working in for many years, it's mandatory. So talk to me a little bit about this landscape of IP and patents in medicine.
That's perfect. So we have a lot of clients that do software as a service, and I say, great. Well, sometimes it's a combination of a device that sends data and then it gets processed server side. So I tell them, look, the device, you have to file a patent on it. You have to disclose everything that's in the device, because if it's really valuable, someone's going to open it up, reverse engineer it. I mean, there are outfits that take apart semiconductors. They slice through silicon. They do electron microscopy. They can figure out what your ROM is by looking at it and figure out what the code. They can get code out. So everything that's in the customer's hands has to have a patent on it. Server side, SAS, it's great because people can't really figure out what you're doing. So you don't need to patent that. And, it's tough under our patent system to patent software and stuff, but it's good. You just keep it server side and you're fine. With pharma, though, it's really, the idea that a certain molecule can treat a particular disease it's intellectual property, right? Because once that information is out and the information wants to be free, anyone in India, anywhere, Africa, Brazil can go in the lab, make that molecule, right? And there's nothing. It's not like you're the only one that can make the molecule, and you're the only one who can be the single source. Because with today's chemical technology, if you give me a sample, I can tell you what it is, exactly the structure of that molecule, usually within a couple hours, using the modern instrumentation we have. And then, just given the chemical knowledge accrued over the centuries, we can go in the lab and probably make that, within a month, we can have a pretty good synthesis of it. So I can go to pharmacy, buy a pill, analyze it, send it over to a contractor, basically make duplicates very, very quickly. That's why you need a patent. If someone has a weird machine learning algorithm that no one, that's kind of adaptive, and it's sitting in a server in their vault, whatever, secure room, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to figure out how that works. Although there are some theories that you can, but besides that, with pharma, it's about that molecule, right? I mean, and the beauty of pharma is that, people complain about the patent system, but once the patent is expired, if the system works like it's supposed to, then that information is free. Anyone can make that molecule. There's regulatory issues, but So that's why I devalue. I mean, we're giving them sort of this monopoly for whatever, on average, it's about 12 years, 11 to 12 years.
Wow.
It's supposed to be 20, but it's on average, it ends up, because of delays, it ends up 11, 12 years. And then later on, the molecules are there for anyone. So I think that's what makes the system really great. And that's why patenting is very important, because if you can't, people say, drugs, pharma doesn't spend that much money on research. But to me, it's like, okay, your brain doesn't use all your body's energy, right? But if you don't have your body, your brain can't work. So to me, it's like pharma's, 80% of their budget is really research and development, because you can't have research and development if you don't have sales. Doctors are pretty conservative. Some, people complain about pharmaceutical advertising, but on the flip side, it takes a long time look at the HIV drugs Gilead developed. It took a really long time for them to really permeate the market, and they're just like the best, made incredible changes in the lives of people suffering with HIV, turning into a death sentence into a chronic disease. And it still took years in order for the medical community to really adopt these things. Just talking about PrEP, which is the prophylaxis. I mean, that would have been obvious right at the start, but we didn't. We had to wait like 20 years before PrEP became a thing. So I think pharma does get a bad rap. There are some bad pharma bros that do give them a bad rap, but overall, I think you can't really say it's all that bad.
Right.
Every drug I'd love to eventually be free.
Right, but I'd love to spend the last few minutes that we have talking a little bit about your role as what you describe as an emotional support angel. I got a chance to talk to quite a few angel investors, especially here in the Silicon Valley. I've yet to hear the term emotional support angel, and I just love it. So talk to me a little bit about what it means to you to be an emotional support angel, and you're investing in general for you both privately and in J Ventures. But let's start with the emotional support side of it.
Right. So I said, entrepreneurs have to think they can walk through walls. So I'll give you an example. So the CEO was raising money. She found a VC, like a VC/angel type or organization. Basically told the GP, what she needs, and he wanted a reference. So she sent him my name. And talking with him, he's asking me, can she be a CEO? And I go, she has this team already. She knows what she has to delegate and whatnot. Just incredibly intense. And, he says, okay, well, let me just, can I just confide in you? I mean, she told me she can raise $10 million this year. I mean, revenue. Do you think that's true? I just started laughing. I say, no way. And he started laughing, and he invested anyway. Right. So that's, part of it. And then, telling the entrepreneur, the CEO, saying, well, look, you gotta, you have to be, it's good. You were so intense. You were really positive and optimistic. You could get that. But at the same time, you have to kind of understand that not everyone's, it is an aspirational goal. So just telling him, maybe, not everyone would have that same response. Some GPs will say, "Oh, she can't. Okay, forget it." Right? But just telling her, yeah. And then the other questions are, they come back to me and says, "Oh, was he really doubting my ability as a CEO and stuff?" And I go, "No. He's gotta ask these questions." So just trying to calm everything down. And a lot of times these CEOs, they just need to talk.
Right.
They just have.
That's something that as a young entrepreneur, you grow up, reading TechCrunch and Crunchbase.
Right, without judgment, because just when they're talking to you, they're hearing themselves talk. Right. When you got that, psychiatrists and now the mental health people and mental wellness people talk about what's called the default mode network. It's kind of that voice in our head that keeps on ruminating and going in thought loops and doing stuff like that. So when you're an entrepreneur, it's very easy to get into that, right? You think, oh, what do they think of me? You're always, because you're always on display. You're always performing. You're always questioning how the audience is receiving you. So it's very easy to get into that. When you're talking to yourself, it just sounds a lot different than when you're saying the same thing to someone else. So just to being someone that they can trust to basically, listen and not be judgmental and keep things in confidence. I think that's important. So kind of going back, the reason I did tell that GP that in my own opinion, I didn't think she was going to be able to get 10 million in 2020. Now it still might happen. So I told him it might happen, but is, just so you don't, I was confident in telling him that I didn't think she could, just because I sensed that he didn't believe it. So I already knew. I mean, if I thought that he really thought she could and just was kind of making sure, I probably would have demurred. I figured out some way to kind of weasel out of answering that question. But
it's a very interesting balance. Yeah, it's a very interesting balance that you're playing here. On one hand, you have stake in the company and you have stake in the success of the company, and part of the success is also the company's ability and the founder's ability to continue raising the funds.
Yes.
On the other hand, you are somewhat also of a psychiatrist and a best friend and a mentor and an investor to the founder.
Exactly. Right. Yes.
An emotional support angel.
Right. So so I pretty much knew the guy, knew, he was convinced she couldn't, and he was just but I think the reason he ended up putting in the money is because she was so confident. So I think a better way of saying, she was confident that she had a shot at it. And I think that's really, if you're doing anything with startups, it's all about the shot on goal, because, all sorts of things can happen. You just, you don't know. So it's about,
I love it.
Is it a good shot on goal? And I think a lot of VCs, they kind of want to see free money. They want to see like money just sitting there and pick it up. Oh, is it an oversubscribed round? Okay, yeah, I want in.
Yeah.
Right? There's this other J Ventures. This guy was pitching. He claimed to have discovered room temperature superconductivity. And being an IP expert, I took a look at his patents, the application he had. He was about to have an allowance, and it looked really good. There were some technical issues that, even though, yes, room temperature superconductivity, it was still not clear how you're going to commercialize it.
Right.
What's the best way to commercialize it? And, J Ventures passed just because they weren't, they had to help the guy with his PowerPoint, but they just weren't sure if there was going to be a big investor coming in. They can put in some money. He had a family office coming in, and he was good. He was open to getting a operating guy, or maybe even a CFO that could pitch. So that was all good. That wasn't really a problem. But they just, is there going to be someone, a big investor? And
I think you're touching upon one thing that we didn't have time to talk too much about. But
that's not a risk. Right? You're
right.
avoiding risk. But
right. I think that it is incredible that, as well, both as a private angel, an emotional support angel, but also part of J Ventures, this ability to bring in a community where all of a sudden we have an opportunity where we have Steve here, who's an expert or is able to go and dig deep into this IP and validate the technology. I think that's something that, really, when you have almost 200 people that are involved with the fund, that's something that incredible that can happen. But Steve, unfortunately, we do have to end here. But I do have to ask my favorite question, which is 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Just the ever optimist. I think that's
the ever optimist. I love it. Steve, thank you very much. Toda rabba. And I definitely look forward to maintaining this relationship and bringing some ideas to you as well.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Take care.